What's going on, y'all? Back with another video. 3 reasons why your vocal mix sucks. Hate to be the one to tell you this, but I'm glad to help. So let's get into it. Reason number 1, your recording is terrible. It could be the acoustics of your space. It could be where you've chosen to record. It could be how you're recording. You could be recording right on the microphone. You could be recording in a noisy place. But recording / acoustics, that's the number 1 reason oftentimes why your vocal mix sucks. Just your recording in general sounds bad. Now, before I go into what things that I run into or hear about bad vocal recordings, I want to play y'all what a dry vocal recording sounds like.
I done showed my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason.
That is like a reference right there for what a dry vocal recording should sound like. If you record your vocal and it sounds like you need to do a lot of EQ to get the tonal balance good, start over. That's probably not the best vocal recording. I guess if you haven't recorded a lot of vocals well, maybe what you think is a good recorded vocal is confusing or something, but it shouldn't sound like, oh, you're in your bathroom. Unless that's the sound you're going for, then it should sound like that. I just want y'all to have that reference point to compare against your vocal recording. So I'll play this one more time.
I done showed my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game out no rhyme or reason.
And that's with no processing, no EQ, no compression, no nothing. What I do want to show you guys really quickly is my booth. So this is kind of small actually, but hopefully y'all can still see this. My space looks different now. I've changed things around, but the acoustic treatment is the same. So this is like the control room area right here. Blah, 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 blah. But when he gets to the booth is what we'll talk about. So immediately when we go in, right, there's acoustic panels on the walls right here. We've got a bookshelf in the back. We got some diffusion. We got some clothes in here. We've got some acoustic panels. I've just got rock wool insulation on the other side of this fabric. I've used wood to create these and put them up against the wall. We also have panels on the ceiling. So I'm using all of this so that when people go in here and they record, the acoustic panels are absorbing a lot of the reverberation and the reflections in the room. And the bookshelf is doing some diffusion, the clothes, some diffusion, some absorption, and it's allowing me to not get a reverberant sound in this space. You can do this at a very inexpensive cost. You could just go to Home Depot. You can have the people at Home Depot cut the wood for you. You just give them your measurements and then you get you a drill and you make some acoustic panels. It could be just that simple. That's the way that I recommend going, but we're going to get into some other ways as well. That's step number 1 about this, is to get a good vocal recording and get your acoustics right in your recording environment. Also, side note, I recorded the entire process of me building this studio, of me building these panels, putting them up, going to Home Depot, getting the stuff, going to get the fabric, all that kind of stuff. So if y'all want to see that footage on YouTube, just let me know in the comments and I'll put that together and make a little series out of it for y'all. It'll be like my Christmas gift to everybody. We obviously talked about the acoustic treatment. That's ways to mitigate the room tone, but even if you got a decent sized closet, like you can go in there and you can have your clothes in there, you might get a little bit of a boxy tone, but to me personally, that's easier to work with than a super reverberant room. Or you can kind of experiment as well. Like what I like to do is I go around, I clap in different areas and I'll try to find the area in the room that is the least reverberant basically, and then that's where I like to start to set up with. And then you can get creative as well. You can use your mattress. You can put your mattress up against a wall. You can use blankets. Like if you have a comforter or something, you can make you a tent kind of situation and record in that. You can get creative. You can try things out and see what gives you a better result than what you're getting. But what you want to do is you want to try to absorb reflections of the room. Another thing you want to do outside of just that acoustic part of it is you want to make sure your mic isn't next to something noisy. If you're recording in your room next to the AC vent, or if you're recording somewhere and we can hear the refrigerator running, or we can hear cars and stuff driving by outside, turn your AC off. If your computer makes a fan noise, try to get your microphone as further away from your computer so we don't hear the fan noise in your recording. Things like that. If there are any actual background noise elements going on, try to minimize or get rid of those. Now, me personally, I'm not totally mad at the chaotic eyeball. It still does pick up some room tone. It doesn't completely get rid of all of that, but I think it's a good alternative for people who don't care about none of this stuff and they're not trying to go to the studio and they're not trying to build acoustic treatment. They just want to record. So it's not what I would use, but I think that's a better option than not doing anything. If that's what you so choose to do, still try to find the best place in your room or in your space to record, but understand that's not obviously the best option. It's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. Out of all of the problems that I have to fix with bad recordings, it's easier to fix a resonant frequency than it is to fix sounds that are just a part of this mono signal, like hella room tone, hella background noise stuff going on. If you use a chaotic eyeball and there's that, I can EQ that out. Dynamic EQ, multiband compression, I can slowly but surely get that tone balance right and make it more presentable. Now, it's still not going to be ideal, but for me, I find that it's better. But still, we can work with all of these. We can make all of them work. Don't be expecting a 10 out of 10 vocal sound when you gave me a 2 out of 10 to work with. So step number 2, treat vocals as their own instrument group. And what I mean by that is, for example, we have string instruments. That's a group of instruments. You got a cello, viola, violin, etc., 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 etc. You have these groups of instruments, and you're not going to mix a violin the same way you mix a cello. Or if we go to brass, you're not going to mix a trumpet the same way you mix a tuba. You're going to mix them differently, but similarly, but you're going to take a different approach because each instrument in that group is used for different purposes. There might be a lower brass tone coming from the tuba and a higher one for the trumpet. So you take a different approach, which means maybe the vocal chain you use isn't gonna work every time for every vocal. So if I'm mixing a singer like Mariah Carey, I should probably mix her vocal different than I would mix a Beyonce vocal when she's singing a little lower. They're two different vocalists and they have two different vocal styles. They're performing very differently. You have to get rid of the mindset or the idea of I'm gonna use this one vocal chain for every vocal and it's just gonna work, because every vocal is a different instrument in the same instrument group. So there may be a different approach needed, and that's just off the instrument side of it. We're not even talking about to the genre of the song or the way they're using their voice. Even if we stay in the rap lane, Big Sean rapping is different than how Larry June raps, even though both of their voices are kind of low, but they're rapping differently. Their styles are different. So there may be a different approach in how you mix their vocals. When you're thinking about a vocal chain, think from the aspect of what is this instrument doing in this song for this genre? What emotion needs to be communicated? How do I need to feel? What rhythm, pocket, vibe are they in or giving off? Instead of, oh, I got an EQ, then I got to compress, then I got a DS, then I got to get rid of all of that. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm here to tell you to think. So for this specific case, I'm going to give y'all an example. I'm going to show y'all two separate songs by the same artist, but they're obviously very different. And I'm using a different vocal chain, I think. I honestly don't even know what vocal chain I'm using, but we're going to find out. We got Pro Q3 as a high pass filter. High pass in there 42. Also, this is a ballad. So that's another thing. If this was a different type of song, maybe I would take away more low end out of his vocal. But since this is a ballad, that allows me to utilize some more of his lower tones to communicate that vulnerability of this song. It makes it a little more intimate if you could really hear the gut resonance of his voice. So I'm leaving that in there. And then there's maybe it's just some harshness or something popping out in that range. And then we got a little bit of 1176.
I done show my heart and it fell to pieces. It's a shame we play this game.
Not really much. It might hit every now and then in the second verse. Then we got some SSL. We're just doing some EQ. This is all we're doing. You can see this. You can analyze the frequencies and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to just leave that right here for now. But SSL, I'm just doing a little bit of EQ on here. That's it. And then EQ-P1A, just some more subtle EQ with this. Then the MEQ, pull tech. And then we got ozone. We're adding some character, some texture, some harmonics to this vocal. We're just going crazy. We're playing around until it sounds right. And we're also using the spectral shaper. There was something in this range probably that was bothering me that I'm just trying to relax a little bit. Pro Q, just some final detailing of the sound. Got a little dynamic action going on down here because I want to keep those lower tones present, but I don't want it to be too much. So I'm controlling it a little bit. That's the vocal chain. And then we got some effects on here. It's basically a doubler, a slap, a quarter note delay. That's stereo. This is a mono slap. That's pants to the right, 3. And then we got a hall, kind of roomy sounding space right there. And then what's this? This is another hall, basically basically. We got 3 reverbs. This one comes on for at some part during the hook, but it's more like a dark reverb, which is another hall. I was going hall crazy. And then just a little bit of mid-side EQ, ducking out a little bit of mid so that vocal can really stand in those frequencies in the song, whatever. That's the vocal chain for real. And then on this vocal bus, there's some tape on here. Give me a little character, a little flavor. RC20. I like to use RC20 sometimes just to introduce a little non-linearity. And then we're using this Bax EQ from Analog Obsession. They have some really good plugins. I'm just boosting a little bit on the top at 18K. And then we got Air EQ, subtle stuff, a little dip here, a little boost here. And then on all of the vocals, we got the VMR on the Trident setting, a little saturation, a little character, Pro Q again, just dealing with some 340, really tucking the little frequencies here and there just to really tighten it up ever so slightly. That's the vocal chain right there for this vocal, for this song. And now we're gonna go to another song, and I'm gonna show y'all the vocal chain for that. It's a totally different song, totally different vibe. Y'all remember this one, and we're gonna go to another one. So now we have this vocal, same vocalist. Let's solo.
Baby, just put on a face. Fuck it up, fuck it up, fuck it up. And she got my hands tied. I'm cuffing it, cuffing it, cuffing it. Lipstick made a trace of where my.
Let's see if the vocal chain differs. And also, let's just play what kind of song this is.
Baby, just put on a face. Fuck it up, fuck it up, fuck it up. And she got my hands tied. I'm cuffing it, cuffing it, cuffing it. Lipstick made a trace of where my dick is. She gon' blow tonight. Sit up on my face.
So that's what kind of song that is right here, right? So on this verse, Pro Q3 high pass filter, but it's at 118 this time. The other one was like maybe 40 or 50 or something like that. But we're at 118 this time. It's much thinner. This is a sexy drill song. That's the vibe and the aesthetic of this type of music. That's what it's telling you to do. It's talking to you. It's like high pass me to 118. It's just begging for it. That sounds bad. It's just telling you to do it. And then I'm using the CLA 76. Now on the other one, I used the 1176 anniversary edition from UAD. This one just has a different sound, a different vibe and character than the other one. This one is more fitting for this style of music. And again, I'm using the Waves Pull Tech and I'm pulling out 300 yet again. Different. I don't think I'm boosting no 1K on this one though. And I'm not boosting any 200, but I'm using similar tools for the same vocalist, but different approach. I'm pulling out some 300 here, and then I got this again. I use the EQP1A, but I'm using it way more, so the attenuation is a lot more this time. It was very subtle on the other song, and then the boost is way higher on this song. And then another SSL channel, I'm dipping out a little bit of 300 and I'm boosting a little bit at 32, so the EQ is even different. And then I'm high passing again with this one up to 28. I didn't do that on the last one. And then I got the Kirchhoff here, and I'm just relaxing whatever this is. A little dynamic EQ right there, and then we're pulling out some 150. And then we do have a parallel. The other song had a parallel too. I forgot to go over that, but we got a parallel. It's just 1176, attack and release, blah blah blah. Not super crazy. Then the VBC Mu from Slate, a little bit of compression on that as well. And then we got Kirchhoff. This is the frequency that I'm adding back in. And then now the effects are very different. So it's the doubler type situation. We're using the micro shift, and then we got a delay, but this one I've distorted a lot more.
Baby, just put on a face. Fuck it up, fuck it up, fuck it up. And she got my hands.
The vibe. And then we got an ambient room space kind of situation going on. I'm just using Deverb and Decapitator. And then we got an air reverb on this one, and I'm just using Rverb, and I'm putting it through this type A situation, and it's giving me an extra bright grain texture mixed in with the other one.
Baby, just put on a face. Fuck it up, fuck it up, fuck it up. And she got my hands tied. I'm cuffing it, cuffing it, cuffing it. Lipstick made a trace of where my dick is. She gon' blow tonight. Sit up on my face and stretch.
And then we're kind of EQing the heck out of this reverb. We're not doing no mid side on this one though, because I don't need that separation in that same way. But I'm EQing right here, blah blah blah. That's what we're doing right there. So that's that vocal chain. And then when we come to the lead vocal bus, I'm using the air EQ again. Very subtle stuff. And then on the entire vocal bus, we got the Fairchild on everything. I didn't do this last time. Not super so much about the compression, but more the character and the texture, but a little bit. I'm using a little bit of that compression. And then I'm using it doing this large dip right here. Definitely didn't do this last time at 189. And then there's a little bit of a dip with a slight dynamic right here. And then we got another SSL channel. Didn't do this last time either. Shelving down a little bit of low end at 79. Bringing down a little bit of 260. I just really wanted to bring that low end down and thin it out. I'm also boosting this up a little bit bit into, if you go like in this area, you start getting a little more saturation from this plugin. So maybe I was just liking that drive sound of this plugin, but this is very different. On the other one, I used tape. I didn't use any tape plugins on here. On the other song, I used the Ozone Exciter to add some character and texture to that vocal. I didn't do any of that. I did some of it in parallel, and I just allowed these plugins with their own characters to add that character and texture and feeling by combining all of these together. And then the bussing is different, but it's the same vocal, but I'm using different tools to get to where the song tells me this needs to go. I'm treating this vocal as its own instrument. I like to get familiar with the vocal and listen to it and just listen what it's telling me to do, what it's asking for me to do, and how it wants me to process it, how it wants me to feel. I'm not trying to mangle it and strangle it into what I want it to be. I just listen to it and it tells me what it wants to be. Like, he's naturally rapping and singing a certain way on this song, so I'm not going to impose my will on his vocal and make it be something that it's not trying to be. And just to really double down on that, I like to treat each vocal, especially when I'm working with a new artist, I like to treat that vocal like a new instrument, because technically it is a new instrument. It's an instrument maybe that I've never even heard before, or I've never mixed before, and I want to get familiar with their voice, their personality, their tone, their texture, the character. What are the strengths of this vocal? Maybe somebody has a very raspy voice and that communicates a certain feeling when they rap or when they sing. I want to make sure I'm not taking that away. You know, sometimes maybe the raspiness could be harsh, but I want that raspiness to stay in a way where it's not distracting or annoying, because that's a part of their communication style. That's a part of what makes them unique. So I want to present that raspiness to people in a palatable way. And I'll play around with EQ and I'll just surf around. That's what I like to call it. I like to surf around with EQ and just see if I stretch and pull and bend this vocal, what happens. And then I'll flatten it back out. And now with that knowledge about what I can do and how I can shape and mold this EQ, now I'll say this is where I want to go with it, and now I'll make those moves. Because if you boost any frequency too loud, it's going to sound annoying. You feel me? So it's not about boosting frequencies up and saying, oh, that's annoying, let me cut that. If you don't hear a problem when there's no EQ on the vocal, probably not a problem. You feel me? So now what I was going to do to finish off this video is I'm going to use two songs, two different artists. There's two female R&B artists. They sing differently, but sometimes we'll get this idea of, oh, if it's a female R&B artist, then I can use this vocal chain and that's going to work for all female R&B artists. But just like the example that I talked about earlier with Mariah Carey versus Beyonce, two different styles of singers. So I just want to show y'all a case of a vocal chain for one singer and then another type of singer and how they're different, but maybe there's similarities. So we'll start at this verse. I'll just play a little bit of the song real quick. That's enough. And then we're going to solo all of the lead vocals. Obviously there is somewhat of a trend. I'm using the Pro Q3 as my high pass filter oftentimes, but in this one I'm high passing to 125. That's a lot to me, but I'm using a shelf in this case, and honestly I couldn't even tell you why I used the shelf. But to me, I think maybe it sounded better than a high pass filter, but I use a shelf. And then I'm using a little bit of dynamic EQ, and then just so I don't skip and forget this parallel situation on here, I'm using the compression, I'm using the EQ, high passed it to 116, a little shelf at the top. And then we're using the virtual mix rack. I'm using the Hollywood saturation. I haven't used that on any of these vocals that I've shown y'all so far, but I'm using the saturation on here because I really like it. And I'm using the EQP1A. Now this is something that we keep seeing quite often, but in this case I'm doing a lot more with the attenuation and the boost and all that kind of stuff. Well, at least down here I am. The boost not as crazy as Keen's song She, but different. I'm using the same tool in this case on all of these vocals, but I'm using it a little differently. And then we got the Avalon. Didn't use this on any of the other ones. I'm using a little bit of the EQ. I'm not using the compression. For this song, if you listen to her voice, she has a whispery, seductive kind of thing, and this has like a sizzliness to it that I kind of just liked. It's an interesting color and texture that I could use with this EQ to emphasize that. So again, that's the example. If someone has a natural timbre or texture to their voice, I'm trying to find a way to emphasize that and really bring it out so you identify with them as this thing. And that's why I chose this EQ. And then LA2A, and then I'm doubling up on the sizzly and I'm using the Air EQ. So this is different as well, because on all of the other songs I was using a Pro Q or a Kirchhoff at the end for my detail EQ, but in this case I'm using the Eosis Air EQ. So you know, you see what's going on the EQ up here. That's all it is. In this particular part of the verse, I guess I've waiting Added that delay right there, but then we'll go to some of these effects. We just got a simple doubler. In this case, I'm using the Valhalla space modulator instead of micro shift or doubler like I used for the last songs because of the way it sounds. This reverb, let's see what that is.
Waiting for you, express my mind and just gon' say it.
Again, I'm using that to enhance that sizzliness, that grain in her performance and how she sounds.
Waiting for you, express my mind and just gon'
Here we go.
waiting for you, express my mind and just gon' say it.
And that's the darker one, right? I'm using all of those in combination to really create a vocal sound for her. Now we're gonna go to another song with another female vocalist and see the difference in that vocal chain. Now you see my process is quite similar, but the plugins that I use and the type of effects that I choose, they change and vary. Oh, also, I forgot to mention that I put a micro shift directly on the vocal. Isn't that bad at 5.7%? But again, it's just what the vocal is asking me for. And then also in certain cases, I use the micro shift versus the doubler. The textures sound different. I'm using these to add texture. I'm using these to create depth. In this song, I wanted her to reel you in. I want her to be in this space cave and she's singing and reeling you in. Every decision, I have a sound in my head. Every decision I make is getting me to that sound in my head. Now we are going to go to the other song. So this is a different female R&B artist, but the treatment is going to be different. We can already see the treatment is different by what we're looking at right here. We got two parallel situations going on. Like we already see it's going to be different, but it's a female R&B artist. So I'm going to use the same vocal chain, right? Wrong. We're going to see what I'm going to use. So I'm just play a little bit of the song real quick.
I wanna connect all the dots, really to places that they are not. Let me see who you really are, unafraid to show your scars. Let me enter your.
So the reason why I want to compare both of these is because both of these songs are alluring to me. I feel like I'm being drawn in on both, but in different ways. Rakaya's song, I feel like she's drawing me into this space cave. So she's in the cave and she's trying to get you to come into the cave. This one, I feel like she's in the bed with a person and she's talking to them because the song is called Let Me Touch Your Heart. And she's like talking to the person maybe in the bed and they're looking at each other. And she's trying to get the person to open up and be vulnerable. And so that presentation is going to look and feel different, even though the desired result is similar. You feeling me? I don't know, that sounded a little riddly how I said it. Anyway, let's look at the vocal chain. So I'm using max bass in this case as my high pass filter to 80. Sometimes I just like using max bass because to me it sounds like it literally deletes all of the information. It just has that sound to me, like it just deletes everything on the other side of that cut, and I kind of rock with that sometimes. And then again, we're using the EQ P1A and the settings are different. They're different every time, but I just love using the EQ P1A on vocals because it's a nice tilt type EQ for me. It gets the tonal balance of the vocal right for me quite quickly. So we're using that, and then we're using the Better Maker, which is a Pultec-ish style type situation, but I'm not using it like I was using the Pultec. And then we're using the Fairchild. To me, this song was calling for it. It just gives me a little character, a little texture, a nice presence on the top. It makes it feel a slightly bit more expensive. And then we're using the 1176. I use the LA2A on Rakaya's vocal. Now I'm using this Fairchild and this 1176. I'm wanting her to still feel alluring to you, but I want her to be a little closer to you, a little more intimate in that way. And then I'm using the compressor on here. So 3 compressors on here, ever so slightly. I'm slightly compressing. That gives me a little more presence, forwardness, just a little more intimate. And then some EQing. So there was just some frequency area down here that needed a little bit of work, so dipping that down. And then another max bass at 43 with a high pass right there. And then we got some parallels, so I'm using the Neve 1073, cutting some top end. I'm blending that back in with the LA2A gray in parallel. I'm getting some texture, some grain, some emotion from this, and this is the frequency range I'm adding back in with that warmth. We're using the oven, and then I'm adding back in this frequency range. That's the vocal chain for that. And then for the effects, we got some micro shift, that's the doubler.
I wanna connect all the dots.
We got some delay.
I wanna connect
all the dots.
And again, club room. I'm wanting her to sound like she's in the bed talking to someone and trying to get them to open up, but also the vibe of this record, it feels like a record that could be sung in a jazz club in a nice intimate setting, and people are, you know, drinking some cocktails and just kick back, chilling with their partner and enjoying a beautiful performance. So I'm keeping that in mind with how I'm presenting this vocal sound.
I wanna connect all the dots, privy to places that they are not.
There you go. Another female R&B artist, but different vocal chain, different presentation, different aesthetic. Also, different subgenre of R&B. So that's that. 3 reasons why your vocal mixes suck. And hopefully this was helpful to stop your vocal mixes from sucking. They will suck no longer. That sounds weird. Thank y'all for checking out this video. If you're liking the vibe, like and subscribe. If you would love to support the channel, please join the YouTube membership at any tier you would like. That is the most awesome, amazing way to support the channel. Or tell a friend to tell a friend to tell another friend, and we can all be friends. If there's anything you want me to make a video about, let me know in the comments and I'll get to that. Thank you to everyone who has already joined the YouTube membership. I appreciate y'all. I'll see y'all next week.